Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. Joan and Janet are subtle energy empaths who navigate consciousness. Their passion is to support you in your evolution. As consciousness, we are all one. One mind, one heart, free of all limitations. Experience this reality with us and discover how it can make a difference in your daily living. Join us in a state of grace as we explore, with warmth and humor, this thing we call life. Now, here are Joan Newcomb and Janet Barrett.
Welcome to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. We're your co-host, Joan Newcomb, coming to you from Tacoma, Washington, and my partner, Janet Barrett's coming to you from Portland, Oregon.
Hello, everyone. I hope you've had a wonderful week and you've enjoyed a lovely day today.
Tonight on Conscious Conversations, we talk about self-talk and consciousness. Do you hear what you're actually thinking? What is your inner conversation? Our minds can take us out of making progress as consciousness. Recognize the difference between your habitual thoughts and your essential self.
There's a lot there. I can think a lot. How about you, Joan? You have a lot of self-talk?
I'm thinking about the things I'm thinking. I have a lot of great stories about self-talk.
That's true. All right. And before I forget, I want to thank all my new connections I have on LinkedIn in India, Australia, and England. Boy, it's just so lovely to connect with people around the world. So I really appreciate it. And for all of you that are someplace else, thank you too. And I'm enjoying it definitely very much.
So namaste, good day,
Yes.
night. And hello.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Well, we have an invitation here to go deeper with us in a way to connect with us beyond the show. I have a website, joan-newcomb.com. And on my website, you can find out all the wonderful things I'm doing. I have a YouTube video I put out twice a week. I have a blog and a newsletter that I put out once a week. We have this show on podcast as well there that you can find out. And then I have meetups that I hold around the Puget Sound. So if you're in the Seattle, Bellevue, Tacoma, or Olympia area, you can see me face to face. And then I also have free webinars. In fact, next week, I have a free teleseminar on transformation talk, and you can find out details there on my website, joan-newcomb.com. What about you, Janet?
Well, I offer Conscious Conversations with Janet and Consciousness Playground Tuesdays and Thursdays here in Portland, Oregon at my home. You can get a hold of those off of meetup.com or at my website, or email me at janetb@janetandbeyond.com. And it's all about doing heart-centered awareness work, which is exactly what we're doing here. And we just get up close and personal. So if you're in the Portland, Oregon area, please think about coming and finding out more and having some fun. I just came out of a special group we had. It's just a lovely experience. Always wonderful. Always wonderful. So,
yes, and then some ways to connect with us on Facebook. You can join us on Facebook. Go to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet and join the group and join the fun there. You can also follow us on Twitter at Joan and Janet is our Twitter handle. And I am also on Twitter at Joan Newcomb, and I have a lot of fun on Twitter. And actually, Janet, you have a Facebook page, Janet Barrett, and my Facebook page, or my fan page is Joan Newcomb, and my page there, my personal page is Joan Marjorie Newcomb. And what else? I have a Conscious Conversations Facebook page for the meetup folks as well. Oh, and we are on YouTube, so you can subscribe to us on YouTube, and you can actually just lie in bed and binge listen to us on YouTube if you like.
well, we have lots of listeners who tell us that they do us by podcast and they listen to us before they go to bed. And we so appreciate the thought that it might be our two voices that they hear go off to La La Land. But that's a great way to do your inner work. So, because when we're unconsciously thinking we're not conscious, we're conscious. We're consciousness at play. So, good stuff to do. So what do we want? We're going to talk about self-talk. Wow, the power of self-talk this week. And everybody does it. It's kind of addictive, kind of habituated. You get all kinds of things out of it. What does that term mean for you, Joan?
Well, it's interesting that you said it was kind of addictive. I believe that we have multiple voices in our head,
Yeah.
and you can have an addictive voice in your head. There's definitely a tendency towards an addict personality, I'd call it. It feeds into the collective dark energy of the world. You know what it's like. It's when you don't have any coffee. You know,
I wouldn't know. I don't drink
you've
coffee.
gone without sleep, or that's just where the fangs come out. But that's a different animal than some other parts of you that have self-talk. But I think Janet is also referring to something I call automatic negative thoughts, borrowing from Dr. Daniel Ammon. He came up with that, and also I call it gremlin voices. We have these rats in our attic, so to speak, that will say negative things. So if you notice what your thoughts are, and it's anything that is limiting or negative, then that is not you as consciousness. If you are hearing a part of you that the quiet, still voice within that is positive and expansive and, telling you that you can achieve anything, well, that's actually your consciousness telling yourself. Different kind of self-talk.
Well, I think the whole conversation about self-talk is that we talk to ourselves all the time, and it often is coming from an automated space. And the power for each of us is to understand and catch it and to notice it. And we can hear, we can ascribe it positive, negative, etc. I think what I look to be is more neutral from heart space awareness and just noticing what the pattern is. And when I started doing this work originally, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago, and I started to understand that my thoughts were dictating how I showed up in my world, how my illnesses were present, how I didn't like something or how I loved something or my attachments, and it was coming out of my self-talk. So I started to, when I would wake up in that state of, oh, what was the first thought I was thinking? I've got my day ahead, or I don't have a day ahead, or whatever it is. I just brought a neutral viewpoint to it, and I started to pay attention. So I think the first thing to do is to realize that so much of what we think about is an automatic, quiet, internal place that we've lost awareness of. So how to do that?
Yeah, and I actually have a slightly different but similar interpretation, which is what makes us interesting. But we actually have a cluster of cells on the left side of our brain that is responsible for organizing, and it's really meant to keep us in line. It's meant us, to remind us what our daily schedule is, to pick up our dry cleaning on the way home from work, that we're running out of bananas and milk, that kind of thing. But it can also weave together an entire story between two unrelated facts, and that we can become completely convinced is true. And it also absorbs all the training and messages we've had since childhood about how to keep us safe. And what that does then is it tells us that we're not allowed to cross the road without, holding mom's hand. And my mother's been dead since January of 2013. So I'm not crossing the road if I'm listening to that voice. So at the root of it, it's intended to keep you safe and keep you organized. And what it ends up becoming is this robot that is keeping you limited.
Well, that sounds like you're talking about your control mechanisms. And the control is getting fixed, as opposed to appreciating that circumstances are changing. And so you can now walk across the street with your mom or without your mom and be okay. So, there's that element certainly about what happens. And I think for me, it was about realizing, what did I say? I could see it in what I verbalized, and then I could pay attention to, well, what was the thought behind that? And once I started paying attention that way, shift and change really happened. It was really important awareness to have.
That's great. So, yes, the shift hit the fan for you. We have lots more to talk about, and we're going to do that in Heart Space in just a moment, but we have to stop for a commercial break. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and stay tuned because we're talking about self-talk and consciousness in a state of grace.
Are you ready to take a quantum leap in your life? Joan Newcomb is a conscious mastery coach who empowers you to navigate life from your own inner wisdom using energy techniques. Contact her through her website, joan-newcomb.com, and take conscious mastery of your life today. That's joan-newcomb.com.
Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you're dealing with? Janet Barrett is a subtle energy empath. Feeling the energies present in your myths and language, she offers a supportive, non-judgmental viewpoint. Experience new ways to relate to and release the energies in those stories. Receive a $25 discount on your first session. Email Janet for an appointment at janetb@janetandbeyond.com. Come explore with Janet. New possibilities for a joy-filled life.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and I'm your host, Joan. I'm along here with Janet, and we are talking about self-talk and consciousness.
It's good stuff. It's important to start to developing our awareness of how we present ourselves to ourselves. I think that's the important part for me is I realize, wow, I'm just reinforcing or I'm just limiting, or I can start to hear the judgment in what I said. So if I woke up and I was coming out of an illness place, and you can moan and groan and stuff, and that's self-talk too, because how you relate to that inner dialogue going on there from your body. And then it was like, oh, was my thinking, wow, oh, I'm so excited about today? Or was it, oh, God, that's stuff I got to do today? And right there, I could feel my setup. And yes. I was like, whoa, okay, Janet, well, what if you could enjoy today? And that started to give me some ways to appreciate what I was having, fulfilling, that destiny thing that, that statement's gone out of my head right in the moment. But, yes. Where you predict your future and there you're in it because you said that's what it'll be. So.
Right. Yeah. You've stated your future.
Yeah.
I had a really profound experience of noticing my inner talk. This was, about 10, 13 years ago. And I was doing the Abraham Hicks thing, and I was noticing what I was saying to myself. And I realized that I spent most of the day, driving around or whatever, and I would have these conversations in my head, and I would be imagining telling people how terrible my life was. I would imagine myself on Oprah telling people how terrible my life was. And so what I had to do was I literally, not figuratively, I guess, had to take my head by my ears and change my self-talk, and I reframed it into the positive things going on, which is also kind of like the power of like doing something like a gratitude list. But what I did was I changed my self-talk, I interrupted myself and redirected my focus. And it was really awkward at first, but within a couple of weeks, I lifted out of a depression that I had been in for years, and I had not known it.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should drop into access
yes.
more of heart space here.
Yes.
And continue this on, because you're bringing up some good points. And I loved how you used the word, I think it was word reframed, and also how to, we can get into talking about, oh my gosh, this is interesting how these words aren't here.
You're not talking to yourself.
I'm not talking. It's quiet in there. Oh, that's so funny. Well, maybe it'll show up later. I know what I want to say and I'm not. So I must be having an elder moment or something. And see, listen to that self-talk, everybody, because it's not about being older, but you could go that way in your thinking. It's just about information is not present where I'd like it to be. So let's take a step back and let go of how we think we are and perceive ourselves to be, and just invite our awareness in and as consciousness to join the party and the conversation. So just step back and relax. See how you are. I don't know if you're upright or laying down or sitting or playing tennis. Doesn't really matter except a matter of focus. So let's just shift wherever you are into your awareness of heart. Feel the beating of your heart and the gratitude and gratefulness for that symbol of life. It is precious. It does mean you are alive. So let's invite that in. And then into another meaning of heart, which is the emotional terrain. There we go. And for a lot of us, this is kind of what we notice, but okay, let's be neutral to what's present. You may have lots of emotions that are all stirred up, and you may have just one, and you may have a rose, you may have the color yellow, you may have a squirrel. I don't know what you might have in there, but just allow yourself to notice it and not be attached or judge, because self-talk is all about judgment, and we'll get into that. So just notice. And then we invite heart, the essence, the core of all, the third meaning of heart. And that's where you and I are one on the infinite sea of potential, where we are just the bits and pieces of photons of light, a little bit of biophotons, which have a little bit of something to them. And then we've got all those resonances and vibrations and flows and ebbs and tides and stories and information. And where it can all come apart in the sea of potential. And this is where we are all one. And we lose our sense of identity that's tied to heart and our emotions, and we move into that place where we are no longer individuals, but we are shared consciousness. There you go. And this is always our point of connection of being. So whether you're conscious of it or not, or aware of it, or noticing it, it is always present. And that's why in a moment's notice, you can notice someone in front of you, or a flower in front of you, or the child, and feel connected, because it's always present. All right, Miss Joan, what do we notice in there? It's going deep, isn't it?
It is going deep. I got a little lost at a couple of images you had earlier on in heart space. I'm like, what is that doing in my heart space? Oh, wait, no, she just suggested it's like it wasn't there originally. Who's putting stuff in my heart space? Yes. Oh, the critical voice. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, the funny thing is that when you bring us into heart space, then all the other stuff we talked about just seems to go right out the window. That's not my senior moment. I think that's my consciousness moment. And that's maybe what was happening to your words, is that you were just in the all that is, and there is no language there. There's images for sure, but there's no language.
Yeah. So for all you listeners out there, just notice. And noticing can be a thought, it could be a feeling, it could be an impression. It's just how we observe ourselves. Because we're all informational-based creatures, all relationship-based creatures. And just feel the breath. There is some constriction I'm tracking, so let's see what it'd be like to release anything that feels constrained. Your idea that you're constrained. Your idea that heart is limited, your idea, whatever the idea is, Just let it go. And you say, well, how easy is that? And we say, how easy is that? Just let it go.
So I think the thing that you're talking about, Janet, and it's having us be more conscious of our self-talk and being more present with ourselves and noticing the difference between that automated voice and the essence of who we are, our essential voice. And that we can make choices about what we say.
Yeah, you have to first know where you are. That's interesting, to have a sense of placement. But it is. We have to notice where you are in relationship to your inner self. And there's a lot of distance between this heart-centered awareness and the mind, and where you think from and where you interpret from. And, it may only literally be a couple of feet between your head and your physical heart, but it can be miles apart in our ability to want to rationalize and reason. And if you have a sense that you want to rationalize and reason, it's because you're trying to justify something that's probably not coming from heart. So we want to shift our thinking from a heart state awareness, not mind leading the heart, in order to maintain better health, and in order to have integrity in your system, in order to get what you want in life. And I don't mean necessarily the physical things, but in what is important, what you decide is important, and what those hidden things are. The self-talk will be full of them. It'll reveal everything.
It's interesting that you mentioned the part of you that wants to reason things out. And the thing I've noticed with working with people over time is a lot of people who are naturally clairvoyant will have a tendency to get intellectual. And I realized that came from when they were younger, trying to make sense of all this information they were picking up, and they would be reading people, their energy was doing one thing and they were saying another thing. So they compensated by being analytical when their intuition didn't make any sense to them.
That's good awareness. Yeah, definitely.
And, that actually brings up, why a lot of us are so disconnected in our self-talk, because, we're all walking around not being, in alignment with who we are and saying one thing and doing another. We're not being tuned in to who we are within. And, there's actually another aspect to self-talk I just realized. There is our physical body has its own narration beyond what our brain is saying. And it's not coming out in words. It's coming out in, I'm hungry, I need a nap. I want to be hugged, or any of these things. And that's a whole other animal beyond our self-talk is consciousness.
I think you bring up how many different ways we engage in self-talk and what that really could be for each of us. And I know certainly with myself, and I see often in clients, is they don't really hear what they said physically. They don't hear it. And then the other part of that is how much of their physical pain or distress is coming from them not being able to acknowledge their self-talk, and how much their thoughts are creating what they're experiencing. And they're so disconnected, they do not understand how powerful they are in speaking something as the truth when it is not the truth, but the body doesn't always recognize it. And it's there to manifest what is being projected. And verbal skills and the voice, the word, are projected energy out there now in the field around you. And boy, I in the last couple of weeks, certainly that's come up a great deal. And sometimes it's just so funny to sit in group with people and just go. And then people will say, well, what do you think the issue is today or whatever? And they'll say something and I'll go, and I'll repeat back what they said, and everybody in the group will get it. That they just said, and then the person gets it, that they just set up themselves. We're setting ourselves up all the time for what we experience. So we just have to get smart about it, I think.
Yeah, that reminds me of people I've worked with recently, and they contradict themselves.
Yeah.
And where that is that I will hear the dual voices going on. There is the essence of them that is knowing that they can make this change, that knowing that they can step up and have or manifest what they desire. And then that ongoing narration you've been talking about, the negating voices that says they can't or they shouldn't, they're not capable, who are they to change now or whatever it is. So your mind can take you out of doing the thing that you most dearly desire to do and that you really are called to do.
And I think often it's a matter of the voice is disguised. So we think it's ours. It sounds like ours. But then when you say, and you can feel that difference, is that your truth? And then you go, who does that sound like? Who used to say that? And invariably they can pick who they're mirroring, who they're mimicking. And it's like, well, that's maybe their truth. Is that your truth? And you give them that chance to become aware that isn't their voice. That's a voice they heard. That's a voice they took on or were imprinted with. And then you have something to work with because you can change that, right? You can, once you understand the distinctions there, you go, oh, well, let's tap into the field where you're holding that and let's be different with it. And there you go. And makes huge, we're so indoctrinated by what we hear around us, and it becomes ours. And it really isn't ours. It's just an interpretation or an impression or something we're holding on to.
That reminds me of a client that I had for years, and as we were coming to completion with our coaching, and we talk about gremlin voices in coaching, and she finally identified this gremlin voice that she had was really the voice of her grandmother, and she had immigrant grandparents, and her grandmother would sit in the corner and she'd criticize of the kitchen, and she'd criticize anybody who walked into the kitchen. So she had embodied this critical, yanta or bubala, babushka, whatever it was,
Bubala,
and so she had to give her something else to do, so.
Yeah, and sometimes that point of origin about the grandmother might have been interpreted as a judgment when she just saw that as care. Right? Because in her experience of coming over and life was rough and wasn't necessarily any easier, and that was her setup, she's thinking she's expressing love or something, but the recipient doesn't have all those distinctions. She just gets what she gets, and then she's got this thing, right? Yeah, that happens a lot of times. More often than not, I presume.
So for listeners out there, I think the place to start is to notice and to listen and to recognize what your habitual thoughts are. because then you can make a conscious choice to do something different. You can interrupt the automation with your actual true authentic voice that you are now.
Mm-hmm.
And, you do that after a while. It's a little awkward at first, changing a habit like that. But when you start to take over your own self-talk, it can just make incredible radical change.
Okay, and that's that point. Okay, so what is it when, big 20 years ago was you do it for 21 days, you write down the positive thought, and either it happened or it didn't happen in 21 days. What was that called?
I don't know. Was that a kind of part of a law of attraction?
Yeah, it was
kind of
big in culture.
Was it like a
New
law of
Age
attraction
stuff.
kind of thing?
Yeah. So the how to take what you were just describing is that it has to come from that sincere place, right? It has to come from a place where you connect to it so that it is your truth, so it can show up. Otherwise, you're just reciting words that are just meaningless. You haven't engaged the state of that information. And that's really important because nothing will change if you don't connect to it. And you can recite over and over and over again. That is so funny. I can't think of that word at all. It's just hanging there. Probably because the power of that word, it's not intention. It's what is that when you, oh my gosh, you write them down, you put them on the mirror.
Affirmations.
Affirmations. There you go. What are you affirming? If you do not affirm from your truth, it won't matter because you're just affirming blather, right? And that's what you get. That's it. Wow.
Gosh, there's somebody I'd love to have on the show, and his name is Mark, and I know his last name, and if I can focus on my bookshelf, I can tell you the different things. Anyway, he's a publisher of a book house. He was the first publisher of Shakti Gawain's books. Anyway, he wrote a book on the Type Z Guide to Success or something like that, and it started for him with an affirmation about he could do things his own way, he could do things in an easy and effortless way, and it broke him out of patterns of underachievement to creating $1 million or something like that. And so I totally understand the aspect of affirmations that don't work if you're not coming from your own authentic voice. But the behind that is a little bit like what I did that got myself out of my depression. And I wasn't using affirmations. I was just, counteracting the automated negative voice. And in doing so, I was creating new neural, not rural, it's country lanes, neural pathways in my brain. And it changed my brain chemistry. So, negative thoughts create ruts in your brain that make it harder to get out of. So you're in a sense exacerbating your own depression. And a way to get out of it is to start changing those thoughts.
Well, and then it's, if you're fortunate to live with someone, and that's the whole point of a partner, is they catch you in your crap, right?
Especially if your partner does that for a living, right?
And our husbands are put to the test often. But my husband comes from a totally different background than I am, and he's orally sensitive, so he hears language, and mine came out of a very facetious, witty parenting. And so I would say things, and my husband would say, "That hurts." And I was just be so angry with him because my intention wasn't to hurt him. And that used to really just another reason to be upset with him, right? As opposed to later on, unfortunately it took longer, sooner, to come into awareness that my intention was not to hurt him, but what I was saying was hurtful. And when I was able to stop and not be reactive and just go, well, you just can't appreciate being facetious and all that. And my whole family, that's the way we talk, because it's about dealing with their hurt, their anger, their pain that way. And, All right. Well, I'm not coming out of my pain, my anger, my hurt that way. So then what would I say? And it broke me. It was a great way to break the habit of realizing that I was reinforcing positions that weren't my truth.
Yes.
And that was huge. So do you have any technique or something that comes to mind, Joan, to offer? Or
Sure. But I mean, I have to chime in my own experience. It's
Oh, okay,
interesting you
great.
said that
Sure.
because words have very deep meaning for me too. So
Yeah.
critical words, sink deep. And, it's like one critical comment, you need, 5 affirming comments to overcome. And that mathematically never works out. But my father would actually say witty things that were also undermining. So it's like, oh, it takes 2 of you to make 1 wit. Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
But he's also verbally abusive. He berate
Yeah.
you with a litany of criticisms as well. But I wondered whether or not he came from a background similar to yours, where where they were throwing out those things, and it was and it really, those words sink deep.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so basically, let me think. I mean, the first thing is not even a technique. It's really just to notice your thoughts and replace them. Because
And that means about being present. Okay, let's
Yes.
offer that to people. We're talking about stopping your story long enough to be present. Okay, so right in this moment, everyone, no matter what you're doing, just bring your awareness, because we're already tracking heart as well as we can. The next thought. And what is the next thought? And is it a thought that empowers you, make you feel get better, like Joan has talked about? If it's a limiting thing, if it's what is it showing up as, then if it's not enlivening you, then it's not consciousness, it's the human that's responding. And so just start to notice where your awareness is in that moment and go, is this helpful? Is this useful? Or is this controlling? Is this limiting? Is this payback? Whatever it might be. Yeah, that's helpful.
I just remembered something else that I did that also shifted my reality, and it was noticing the thoughts I had around relationship.
Oh, okay.
And I did do a law of attraction kind of thing to manifest my current husband, and I made this decision that I was tired of the string of losers I'd been dating, and and it was kind of like it was now or not. I was like I was in my I was 47 and almost 47, 46. And that was it. I was going to like either quit the dating game and be single for the rest of my life, or this was it. And I took, it ended up being about 9 weeks really, catching that I was going around reciting a litany of all the losers that I had dated, and what was wrong in all those relationships. And that was creating an affirmation for more. And this is an affirmation thing. I had to shift it to making declarations of my next relationship is kind, my next relationship is gentle, my next relationship has their own spirituality. What started happening as I shifted that conversation is I started getting the sense that there was a Yenta in the sky. She was sitting at a table with a box of index cards, and it was like pre-Rolodex. And I'd say, I want somebody with their own spirituality. And she'd say, well, what if he's Buddhist? I'm like, well, that's fine. And then, I'd want somebody with children. It's like, well, what if he doesn't have children? I go, well, he has to, like mine. And I started getting really whimsical about it as I went along. I said, I want someone taller than my kids because I have 2 sons and I wanted not to deal with the alpha male issue in that. So they have to be taller than my kids. And then I thought, I also want him to wear glasses so, when he takes them off, he doesn't see my wrinkles. And and then I got past Valentine's Day. That was the important thing, was I didn't want to do this before Valentine's. So after Valentine's Day, I went, okay, now, well, where is he going to be? And I got a free weekend from Match.com. I thought, well, I guess if I'm on Match.com, he could be on Match.com, and I wasn't going to pay for it. So I went on this free weekend for Match.com, and he was the only Tibetan Buddhist on Match.com. He was the only person I ended up having coffee with, and he was the right one. And he's 6'6". My children are 6'4", so that was a pretty tall order. And then,
literally.
And he wears glasses. And there was a couple of other really key important ingredients. And within that, the universe has a sense of humor. And so there were some things to work out. And the other thing I felt like was, from another perspective, is that I was actually creating this person into form. I was bringing this person into my hologram. And there were aspects of him that needed to get filled in that took 10 years to do. That or he's half Swedish, and so maybe it took a while for him to get more three-dimensional. What were you going to say?
Well, what I do hear in that, Joan, which is such a lovely experience of that work, is that you decided to quit treating yourself badly by having losers around you.
Yeah.
And it started from within that spot, that you decided to treat yourself differently. You deserved better. And that may have been all the silent stuff that was going on that didn't get said, because it can get, you get distracted by, he's got to be a certain height and weight and, smell just right, whatever those things are. But it was in appreciating yourself, I think, is what I sense as consciousness there. And that this someone would bring out the best in you and put you first in ways that you would allow yourself to be put there. Because that's really what relationships are about. And, of course, much more. But it's about that so importantly. So, and he's a lovely man. He'd probably do anything for you.
Now,
yeah.
It was a little bit like getting a Great Dane that wasn't entirely domesticated, and I'm terrible at training.
Right.
I had to take my kids to daycare in order for them to get toilet trained.
Yeah, and my husband and I, we've been 39 years, and I would have to say that for a long time it was like, we're together because we want to be together. And we knew that because we went to this psychic before we met. Well, after we had met, and she goes, boy, the only reason you two are together is because you want to be together. So we were up for it, and it's a lovely relationship. I prize them deeply. So how are we doing? Does it seem like...
You've got a little bit of time before we're sliding into the next commercial break. So do we want to stay in heart space for this?
Well, I think it's nice to leave ourselves here. Because all you're doing is shifting awareness. You're always here. I mean, your heart is in your body. Your sense of emotions are in your body, and that core essence, we feel that connection. So it's always there. It's just so.
So I had something else to chime in based on, what you had just said about, allowing myself to be treated better. And so what you do when you shift your self-talk is you allow yourself to be in a state of new possibilities, and you allow yourself to create as consciousness a brand new experience, an expansive experience, a positive experience, what you desire to have. So, bringing in the greater communication is consciousness. That is the thing I wanted to say.
Well, and I think, whatever the thought is, if you just allow yourself to have the chaser, well, what if that could be different?
Yes.
and start to play with that without attachment to outcome, because that often is, you have to be, like affirmation, you have to have that in a right mindset. Law of attractions, you have to be in that right organization of that. And so take the pressure off yourself and just ask, well, what if that could be different, without attachment? And it might be fascinating to see what shows up in our lives differently. And as listeners, we'd love to hear from you. So as you do this and see what shows up, I see it in group all the time, that people in starting to ask, well, if this could be different, it does make a difference.
Yeah, that's great. And so I'm inviting everyone to hold this awareness of heart space as we go through the next commercial, and we'll come back in just a few seconds.
Are you ready to take a quantum leap in your life? Joan Newcomb is a conscious mastery coach who empowers you to navigate life from your own inner wisdom using energy techniques. Contact her through her website, joan-newcomb.com, and take conscious mastery of your life today. That's joan-newcomb.com.
Would you like a fresh approach to the challenges you're dealing with? Janet Barrett is a subtle energy empath. Feeling the energies present in your myths and language, she offers a supportive, non-judgmental viewpoint. Experience new ways to relate to and release the energies in those stories. Receive a $25 discount on your first session. Email Janet for an appointment at janetb@janetandbeyond.com. Come explore with Janet. New possibilities for a joy-filled life.
You are listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. To reach our program, please send questions and comments to consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. That's consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Now, back to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet.
Welcome back. You're listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet. I'm your host, Joan. I'm along here with Janet, and we have been talking about self-talk and consciousness.
I think it's important for people to understand how their habituated responses could be their habituated actions, and it kind of feeds back and forth, and how to catch yourself into paying attention. And what comes to mind is the act of brushing your teeth. So, that's an automated response a lot of times, and people get up and they go to brush their teeth, and then they immediately go to, oh, I don't like my teeth. Oh, this is a problem. Oh, I got to get to that dentist. And all of a sudden, what are you thinking? What have you got associated? And you don't know whether it's a chicken or the egg, right? It's like, I didn't hear anything about, oh gosh, what wonderful teeth. Oh, I just love them. Look at these. They just work so well. I'm so grateful to all of them. That's a whole different scenario going on there. So, and then there's the people who look at their face and they go to shave it and they go, oh, God damn, just like my father. Ooh, really? Ooh. Listen, people. Listen to what you're saying. You gotta. There's so much information. If you want to know anything about yourself, just start listening.
I hear snoring.
I heard my neck crack.
But it's true,
Yeah.
I know that when I am connected to myself as consciousness, I have a very loving experience towards my body, and I feel parental towards it. And that includes my personality. So I feel loving and parental towards myself and my fallibility. I think that is, my fallibility. And, and it's really like my loving my inner 5-year-old as I'm brushing my teeth and arguing with myself that I'm not going to floss.
Oh, right there. Okay. Right.
Yes, well, sweetie, if you don't floss your teeth, then, you can say goodbye to them. You can
Well,
create a
that's a
different
belief.
reality. You can create a different reality if you want. Yes.
Right.
I can
Yeah.
appreciate my parents paying for orthodontia when I was 14. Otherwise, I'd have huge buck teeth. But,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but so there you are, and just the theoreticals of it is that you're still holding the belief system from when you were 13, right? Before the teeth got done. Well, maybe you have great teeth and you'd love to floss. What would that be like? Because you're in appreciation of how it's worked so well and they look so pretty. I mean, so we can change that, bring awareness to the self talk. And then, well, what would I like to be thinking? Right. And get kind of a little clever with it. And you can always fall back on appreciation and gratitude. Start there because out of that comes, oh, okay. Sometimes that's all there is. And we are so funny in our bodies and our thoughts. And, that's the one thing I get many things out of doing this work, but it's the cosmic joke and, how this is the best thing going. This is what I'm left with what I have crafted. And I have to be okay with that. And it's not that I have to be, it's just life's a lot easier if I'm all right and in sympathy, empathy, and compassion with it and in delight.
yes.
You want to be in delight, right? And that's consciousness, I think.
And we've created our bodies and we've created our lives as consciousness. And so as consciousness, we love our bodies and we love our creations. And you think about it is that we come in all sorts of shapes and sizes and aren't we creative? Because if you're an artist and if you're a sculptor, you love to make all sorts of different sizes and shapes and colors and appendages and things like that. Mm-hmm. And that's as creative as we are as consciousness. That's what we have manifested this form through focusing on it. And that's what we're learning to do here and now is to use a different focus to create different reality.
Well, and that's an important thing. Everybody does self-talk, whether they're aware of it or not. And if you're having issue with someone or something, it might be fun to just switch to the reality where you could hear their self-talk. Wouldn't that be interesting? And then you might find some similarities in the differences or in whatever the illusion is, because everybody's got doubts about something or questions or enjoys or whatever. And, it's often easier to see ourselves in others. So, you might ask people, what are you thinking when you say that? What's motivating you?
What are you thinking when you say that? Oh, you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking we have some things to tell people about with the show coming up next week and also how to stay in touch with us. Okay. So I thought I'd let folks know is that next week on Conscious Conversations, we are talking with Harvey Kraft, award-winning author of The Buddha from Babylon, The Lost History and Cosmic Vision of Siddhartha Gautama, and the upcoming novel, The Waker, Portal of Perfect Light. Harvey Kraft is a spiritual archaeologist adept in interpreting ancient mythic language. His innovative and strategic solutions have helped individuals and organizations transform their mindset and relationships. And Mr. Kraft himself has been transformed. He's going to be focusing on writing, and actually today he's focused on writing and speaking, providing through thought leadership derived from an ancient visionary history that still shapes modern times and whose wisdom can be leveraged to create a wonderful future. He just sounds like a fascinating person. I'm really looking forward to talking with him.
I'm looking forward and hoping to that he'll be able to explain Buddha and consciousness and what that might mean in today's terms. Right? Because a lot of us do have that are taken with the Buddhist interpretation of life and love and basically consciousness, right? Because it encompasses everything.
Buddha nature is what they're talking about.
Buddha nature, exactly.
And compassion, yes.
Yes. So for all of our listeners and those new to us, we're looking forward to this very much. And we want to let them know they can catch us on YouTube or podcasts, and the different ways they can get a hold of us.
On Facebook, you can follow us on Facebook, Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and you can follow us on Twitter at Joan and Janet. You can also follow me on Twitter at Joan Newcomb. You can follow Janet on Facebook, Janet Barrett. You can follow me on Facebook, Joan Newcomb or Joan Marjorie Newcomb. And you can also subscribe to us on YouTube. And my website is joan-newcomb.com. You can go there to find out about my meetups. You can see my YouTube channel is on there too. I do YouTube twice a week in my writings. And Janet, how about your website?
That would be janetandbeyond.com. And you can sign up for my blog there, my weekly writings, and get my 10 top tips for enjoying life. And there's much more than that available there.
It's because you're a big giver. You've got 28 there, but you said
yeah, really, I just started writing. So, and I'm never short for words very often. And even if I use lots of short words and long words now and then. But anyway, I like words. So please enjoy life and take a moment to appreciate that you are in life with all of us, and that you are consciousness at play.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and I'm your host, Joan Newcomb, and
I'm Janet Barrett still.
Thank you so much for joining us as Consciousness Expressing and Evolving, and tune in next week, same time, same channels.
You've been listening to Conscious Conversations with Joan and Janet, and thanks so much for helping to co-create the show, no matter if you're listening live or on demand. You energetically contribute to our collective experience. Joan and Janet love to hear from you and invite you to email your comments and ideas for them to explore each week. Contact them at consciouswithjoanandjanet@gmail.com. Tune in next week for another great show, and until then, keep enjoying this wonderful adventure we call life.